Marjorie Taylor Greene has turned into like the annoying mom that shows up at the PTA meetings and doesn't shut up, or the person who you know is going to be at the HOA meeting and also isn't going to shut up and is going to gripe about every little stupid thing that is bothering her in that given day. Doesn't matter how based in reality it is. Doesn't matter if there's anything you can do as a PTA or a HOA to fix it. They're just going to be there to bitch and moan. Everyone's going to groan, but then what they're going to do is they're going to go on social media. Oh, they're going to go on Facebook. And they're going to blast you on Facebook. They're going to show you, and then all the sycophants and all the COs are going to go, yeah, you get it, woo! That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene, the firebrand Georgia Republican, did last night, as she attempted to get rid of Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, but the House overwhelmingly dismissed a motion to oust Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. Of course, we went through all this drama, last year with the ousting of Kevin McCarthy. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene had her way, Mike Johnson would have been blasted out as well. But the vast majority of Republicans, 196 of them, with only 10 Republicans joining Marjorie Taylor Greene, said, no, we're good. And then also you had 163 Democrats voting in favor of the motion to table Marjorie Taylor Greene's resolution, with 30 Democrats joining her, give or take, a little more than 30. So actually, Marjorie Taylor Greene had more Democrats on her side than she did Republicans. What does that tell you? Who's the rhino now, huh? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm thinking about at 6:07. Good morning. Happy Thursday. It's great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. This was comical. Now, locally, how did our local representatives vote? This is interesting. So you had Sharice Davids vote with the majority. She did not want to oust Mike Johnson. This is, of course, Sharice Davids, our 3rd District Congresswoman here in Kansas. Only one person out of the Missouri and Kansas delegation, and that would have been Eric Burleson, Southwest Missouri guy, 7th District, replaced Billy Long, our buddy Billy Long. He went with Marjorie Taylor Greene. He was one of the 10 Republicans who joined Marjorie Taylor Greene in this attempt to oust Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. So Burleson, here in Missouri, Southwest Missouri, was joined by Andy Biggs of Arizona, Elijah Crane out of Arizona, Warren Davidson out of Ohio, Paul Gosser out of Arizona, a lot of Arizona, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey in Kentucky, Alexander Mooney in West Virginia, Barry Moore in Alabama, Chip Roy, they're in Texas, and one more Republican here. Who is it? Victoria Spartz in Indiana. They were the 10. 190 Republicans said no. 10 said, okay, we'll go along with this, and they got blasted. And they weren't just getting blasted by fellow members in the House of Representatives, like Mike Lawler, a Republican out of New York, who said this, but there was also Donald Trump on board.
Moscow Marjorie has clearly gone off the deep end, maybe the result of a space laser. But this type of tantrum is absolutely unacceptable, and it does nothing to further the cause of the conservative movement. The only people who have stymied our ability to govern are the very people that have pulled these types of stunts throughout the course of this Congress to undermine the House Republican majority.
That's an adult right there. That's what that is. You know how you get more conservative legislation? And I want to see more, trust me. I'm not happy. I'm not sitting here because knocking Marjorie Taylor Greene because I'm thrilled with the job Congress is doing. If you've listened to this show for 5 minutes any day of the week and you catch a segment about the federal government, you'll know that I'm not sitting here a happy camper on the way they operate. But you know how you do a better job as far as I'm concerned? You got to win elections. You got a couple seat majority there in the House of Representatives. You don't have the Senate. You blew that back in 2020 with those Georgia special elections, which, you can point the finger to a lot of people for how that went down. And you don't have the White House. So tell me, I want to see more conservative legislation. I do. I don't think Congress is doing a great job. I don't love the spending bills. We're $35 trillion in debt. Someone looking at it the other day talking about Social Security, saying, is that going to be around in 10 years? It's all one big mess. But you can't complain about it when you're not winning elections. And Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to realize that. And she needs to understand, we all want to see better policy. But you know how you do it, John? You got to win these elections.
It's interesting you speak of her. We had a conversation last week, and it was on the local level.
Yep.
I can't remember who coined the term, but they used the term Facebook senator.
Oh, Mike Searpoy.
That's what I was thinking it was. And, of course, he was talking about the filibuster.
Yes.
Right. Facebook senators is a term I'm going to use to file certain people. She's definitely one of those. I mean, it hits and likes and clicks. And you're not winning an election with hits and likes and clicks out there with the public.
You're
necessarily.
Not. AOC is not doing it. And on the other end, Marjorie Taylor Greene's not doing it. Because as they double down on 5% of the population, maybe, there's the middle 80, 85, 90 who are looking at this stuff saying, you guys are nuts. You're crazy. Even traditional Americans, of which I would obviously consider myself one, want to see better legislation. But I'm not naive enough to think that Mike Johnson can do anything with a couple-seat majority in the House of Representatives, send something to a Senate led by Chuck Schumer and a White House led by Joe Biden or somebody. I don't know if it's him or who it is, led by somebody who's not going to see the world the way you do and see the country the way you do. So put yourself in Mike Johnson's shoes and ask yourself, okay, if I need to just get through the year, and by the way, shutting down the government doesn't do Republicans any good right now. You have got to basically play the game to set yourself up for a huge victory in November. That's what you have to do. And even Donald Trump, he said this last night on his Truth Social. He talked about this. He said, I love Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's got spirit. She's got fight. And I believe she'll, I'm just picturing him reading this out loud to his people before he hits the send button.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she's got spirit. She's got fight. I believe she'll be around and on our side for a long time. However, right now, Republicans have to be fighting the radical left Democrats and all the damage they have done to our country. With a majority of one, shortly growing to 3 or 4, we're not in a position of voting on a motion to vacate. At some point, we very well may be. But this is not the time. That is from Donald Trump. He's right. He's right. Even if you're sympathetic to the cause, this is not the time. You need to show the average American voter that you are a serious party that can govern and that if given more power in November, will do things to better everyday Americans' lives.
Boomers will relate to this. The great Kansas City Ed Asner portrayed Lou Grant on Mary Tyler Moore. He was talking to her one time, and she took it as a compliment. He goes, Mary, you've got spunk. She's like, well, thank you. I hate spunk. That reminds me of the whole situation. Right?
Well,
you've got spunk.
Trump knows he's got no bigger ally than Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, yeah.
So he's trying to lay her down nicely. Gives her the old, you've got spunk, fight, spirit. He's doing that whole thing. But he's basically saying, hey, Marjorie, sit down and shut up. And by the way, good for President Trump in laying it out like that and calling it like it is. He's right. There's one thing that matters right now. Basically, try to limp this thing to the finish line in November, limit the damage, and then set yourself up to win and look like the serious party. That's it. 913-4087-957. 614 as we get it rolling on a busy Thursday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We've got a busy morning with Quentin Lucas at 7:30, the police chief Stacey Graves at 8. That's all coming up. And we also have to dive into the Kansas City Star taking a dig at our own Ray Stevens. What is that all about? In a great interview he did last week with the owner of Strips Chicken and why he's leaving Waldo. I mean, that was ridiculous. We'll do that at 6:35 right here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Headline story today at the Kansas City Star as we get a Thursday morning rolling on KCMO 95.7 FM. Kansas plans to get Chiefs Royals, relies on billions in bonds with high degree of risk. This is, of course, in reference to these Star bonds that have gotten a tremendous amount of attention the last couple of weeks on the Kansas side of the state line. As we know, the legislature is making a play to get the Chiefs and maybe the Royals over to Kansas, put them out there at the Legends, and create basically, as far as I could tell, it would basically be a replica of the current sports complex, just on the other side of the state line and more modernized 50-plus years later. But the Star, to its credit, did a very good piece. Jonathan Shorman, it's a long piece, by the way. It's probably 1,500 words or so, where they talk about the risk involved with some of these Star bonds. They specifically note the Prairie Fire project down there in Overland Park, which involved $65 million in Star bonds back in 2012 to build that Prairie Fire Museum, all the restaurants. There's rentals down there off of 135th Street. We did a holiday party there a couple of years ago. You should have seen John and Mark. These guys were off their rockers, man. I couldn't stop them. I mean, they were taking shots. Woo! I mean, they were having a blast. The amount of money they spent on sales tax dollars, they paid off the Star bonds themselves that night, these two guys. Unbelievable. So anyway, I'm looking at that, and I'm saying to myself, that was a failure. It was. They note here, last year, the Prairie Fire Star Bond project defaulted, unable to make a $15 million payment on time. The museum's nice, but let's be honest, it's not some massive tourist attraction down there at Prairie Fire. I like it. It's a nice little museum. But, I mean, Mark, when's the last time you said, hey, I got to take the girls down into that Prairie Fire Museum?
Yeah, I suggested it once to my wife when Deanna Rose Farmstead was closed. They were trying to find something else to do over there.
Yeah.
And she still wouldn't take them over there. So, yeah, I don't know.
There is that kind of cool music bar across the street. I'm blanking on the name, but it's a good spot. But either way, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, okay, that's one example they start up the story with that has been a failure on the Kansas side using these Star bonds, where basically you take the sales tax monies within the Star bond district that the state or the city or the county draw, and you use those sales tax revenues to pay off the bonds. Kansas is the only state that has something like this. And Kansas politicians like to brag about the fact that they're the only state that has this kind of a program, where it doesn't raise your taxes, it just takes the state tax revenue from the sales taxes and pays off the bonds for the project. But I sit here and I say, gosh, if you're the only state that's doing it, is it really that great of a deal? Is it really that attractive of a project? Now, $65 million for Prairie Fire is nothing compared to what it would cost to get the Chiefs and the Royals out to KCK. You'd be looking at, if you did both teams, probably $4 to $5 billion in Star bonds. And as the Kansas City Star notes here, some teams, or I should say some politicians, are looking to authorize Star bonds with a 30-year term to pay up to 100% of the cost of building a new stadium across the state line. Now, that's unheard of. Normally, what these are drawn towards is not 100% financing. Typically, Star bonds allow for 50% financing. That's right, 50%. But if politicians get their way in Kansas, and this is across the state, across Republicans and Democrats, this is across the political aisle, they would try to potentially allow for up to 100% financing. Now, the good news, Kansas Department of Commerce, which ultimately would need to approve any Star bond project, indicated to the Kansas City Star, the agency is highly unlikely to grant a 100% bond-financed project. Patrick Lowry, an agency spokesperson, told the Star, Commerce currently is authorized up to 50% financing, but we rarely go over 30%. We would not anticipate authorizing 100% financing even if allowed. But this could play a big role in this special session that is likely to come to Kansas here in the next couple of weeks, because Laura Kelly will not sign the tax cut plan that passed the House and the Senate a couple of weeks ago. She won't do it, even though it's got everything that Republicans and Democrats in part want. It was a bipartisan bill. And the belief, and that broke on the show this week from Dave Traubert from the Kansas Policy Institute, the belief is that part of the reason Laura Kelly wants to hold a special session and is not going to sign this tax bill is because she wants to basically get the legislature to approve a star bond district, potentially up to 100% out there in the Legends area, to try to convince the Royals and the Chiefs to come to Kansas and make this into a huge political win for her and also make it a huge political win for her successor, a guy who is likely to be, if she has her way, David Toland, who is the current lieutenant governor in the state of Kansas. That's what this is. This is politics at its core. And as Patrick Tuohy from the Show Me Institute said yesterday, both parties are to blame for this economic development nonsense.
The economic development argument is not partisan. Republicans are just as bad as Democrats. It's not ideological. And again, they're going to make a pitch. Why not? But the thing that Kansas voters may think is, look, we enjoy the benefits of Arrowhead where it is. We don't have to pay for any of it. Let Missouri keep it. Let Missouri pay for it, and we'll just come and go as we please. I'm sure a big portion of the Arrowhead fan base, the Chief fan base, comes in from Johnson County anyway.
He's right. Anytime I go to a game, it's a caravan going in 435 East. It's a caravan coming out on 435 West. And all it costs you is a 3/8 cent sales tax when you do business in Jackson County. Is the ego really that big for some of these politicians to change that setup to get them to your side of the state line? For what purpose? Maybe you get one Final Four every 25 years. I promise you, Kansas City is not going to be in the regular rotation of Final Fours. It's not going to be in the New Orleans, Phoenix, Miami rotation. It's just not. It's not that kind of town, and that's okay. It really is. Dennis in Bonner Springs, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete, maybe you can help me. Am I missing something on the star bonds? The star bonds that was used for the Village West Legends was 25 years, $450 million. It just paid off. That is the largest tourist attraction in the Kansas City area, 10 million people a year. Now, a stadium complex, is it going to generate that kind of a tax? I don't think it is. I don't understand.
Yeah. I don't either, Dennis, and that's why I need to continue to get more experts on this who are not necessarily involved with the project itself, because they're going to have their spin on this thing. But I agree. I don't know how the money's there unless you're doing Final Fours and Super Bowls every year.
Well, I think what it is, she's eyeing the $4 billion surplus the state of Kansas has and thinks she's going to use that for her legacy. Mm-hmm. I think that'll be tied up in the courts so big time, because most of that money is the county's money.
Yes.
That they won't let the counties have.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis. No, you're right.
Have a good day.
You too, buddy. I appreciate it. And then the legislature's got to sign off on any of this. And I'm not convinced the legislature is looking to give Laura Kelly some massive win where she gets to claim she brought the Chiefs to Kansas. I don't see that happening. Now, speaking of the Star, for the good piece they did on the Chiefs and the Royals, they more or less did a hit piece on our own midday guy, Ray Stevens. We'll tell you how and why next. Can you at least credit the damn radio station if you're going to write about it? Kansas City Star, is that too much to ask on a Thursday morning here on KCMO? So, great story and great job by our midday guy, Ray Stevens. He's on every day, 10 to noon here on KCMO. He's done outstanding work in the last, what has it been, 8 months now, 9 months? He's been on the air here at KCMO, give or take. Anyway, Friday, he had one of his biggest interviews with a guy named Todd Johnson, who owns Strips Chicken. The Strips, they've got multiple locations around the metro. And they had him on because Todd announced he was closing his Waldo location. And part of the reason, as he noted here on KCMO on Friday, as to why he was closing his Waldo location was in part because of bad interactions with criminals. I mean, people, making ugly threats, rape threats against employees, doing drugs in the bathroom. And also, as he noted on the Ray Stevens show, his insurance rates were skyrocketing because of crime in the area. And the Kansas City Star yesterday chose to go after Todd Johnson instead of, wondering about the crime issues in Kansas City and how to fix it. Classic Kansas City Star. I'll get to more of what they wrote, but here's what Todd Johnson said on Ray Stevens' show on Friday.
But my insurance was at Waldo around $9,000 a year leading up to last year in June 3rd, when my renewal came up, and it jumped to $16,000.
Whoa.
And I'm asking my insurance agent, I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, there's so much crime, sorry, but, there's a lot of crime in that area. So we go by, zip code and stuff. And so I was freaked out, but, on top of everything else. But, we renewed the insurance and everything was good. This year, I just got a notice last week that as of June 3rd of this year, it's going up to $22,000, more than double what it was just 2 years ago for the same insurance on the same building sitting in Waldo. My other locations, I realize the insurance is going up, that they're going up 10 to 15%, no big deal. I've looked just in the last week, I've looked at other agents, and they won't even cover. Two different companies won't even write insurance on the Missouri side in that area. So that was one thing of the four that was like making me think, what the hell am I doing?
Right. Yeah, throwing good money after bad.
So that was Todd Johnson, owner of Strips Chicken, on with Ray Stevens last Friday. And that interview is up on the podcast page. Just search Ray Stevens, search KCMO, and you can listen to the full interview. It was outstanding from last Friday. So the Star writes about this. And, of course, their tactic is to go after Todd Johnson and question the credibility of a decent businessman who, hires people and pays taxes in Kansas City, instead of wondering why and how places in Waldo are struggling to get by, and question some of the public policy that is in place in this town as to why business owners who pay taxes, who employ people, who help the city function, they choose to go after them instead of going after, criminals and bad politicians. No. We're going to go after the businesses and question the credibility of these business owners. The Kansas City Star writes here, since closing, Johnson's been making the media rounds, ticking off his list of complaints about the city. In addition to the break-ins, he's dealt with counterfeiters, with vagrants continually disrupting his business, with skyrocketing insurance policies caused by all the above. They go on the note here, the insurance situation seemed to put the ball in motion on Strip's closing last week. He talked about some of the issues that he had in an interview with the Star and with local conservative radio host Ray Stevens. Johnson often veered into a more macro explanation of the woes that had befallen his restaurant. Now, I'm just going to note here, local conservative radio host Ray Stevens. Now, we know Ray's a traditional American, red-blooded, loves the red, white, and blue, right? You hear him every day, 10 to noon on KCMO. But they frame it that way for a reason. They don't say, local talk show host on 95.7 FM KCMO Ray Stevens. They just brand it as local conservative radio host. You think they do that if he was to appear on KCUR? Let's say Todd Johnson went on there. You think they'd say local liberal host Steve Kraske? You think they'd do that? Local liberal radio host and then fill in the blank name at KCUR, National Panhandler Radio? No? You don't think? I don't think they do that either. There's a reason they frame it like that. They're getting a point across. They're trying to discredit Ray, the show, this radio station, by saying it's all just about the boogeyman and about, banging the drum and hitting home the message. They're trying to delegitimize the show and the radio station. The Star then writes later in the story, Johnson had a sympathetic listener in Stevens. That's Ray. Ray, the sympathetic listener Stevens. That's him. That's going to be his new branding here on KCMO 95.7 FM. But pressed by the Star for specifics on some of his claims, Johnson was soft on hard facts. he declined to say which insurance providers no longer cover business in Waldo. He didn't know the name of the prolific offender who'd broken into more than 100 businesses, just that the cop had told him that once. Yeah, because we all remember the names and make sure we want to know who the vagrants are that are terrorizing businesses around Kansas City. I'm sure it's like Bob Smith or something like that. Gosh, shame on Todd Johnson for not knowing his name. Is that really a problem? That Todd Johnson can't name the vagrants that are doing drugs, threatening to rape his employees, masturbating in his bathrooms and all these disgusting things that he's alleged over the years that have happened to his Strips Chicken in Waldo? Boy, he should really know the guy's name. How dare he not know his social security number while he's at it, John?
Not the kind of person that leaves a business card in the fish bowl on the counter for a free lunch.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I got 10 free sandwiches, with my name on them. That's not what we're dealing with here. So this big piece for the Kansas City Star is to discredit Todd Johnson. But it's not just about discrediting him. It is also about sending a message. And the message here is this. Complain about public policy. Complain about politicians in this town at your own risk. One of the biggest things I've griped about in the last couple of years as crime has increased in and around Kansas City proper is how business owners, Chamber of Commerce folks, neighborhood associations have not spoken up. They've been too afraid to speak up. And this is case in point as to why. They do not want to suffer the backlash. It takes a lot of gall. It takes some big cojones to do what Todd Johnson's doing here. And that is basically say, the politics of this city are driving me out of business. And when you do that, this is what happens to you. You'll get hit pieces written about you and your credibility by garbage outlets like the Kansas City Star. Instead of them saying, gosh, maybe we got a problem here. Instead of them going after the criminals. Instead of them saying, what do we do? How do we get a prosecutor that's going to make sure that we clean up the streets and we make sure our businesses feel safe and want to do business and can do business here? Instead of that, this is what they choose to do. It's pathetic. It's disgraceful. And at least on this show, it's not going to stand. Mike's in Kansas City. Good morning, Mike.
Yeah, the Star should know better, because if he mentions somebody's name and that guy had not gone through the due process of a court or anything, he could be sued.
Well, that's an
because
excellent
it's just
point.
An allegation or hearsay, and, he's putting him up. And the second thing, you made a good point about the Star going after anybody that challenges the woke agenda. Why do you think they got those 87,000 IRS agents? Mm-hmm. People will get audited. People go to school board meetings. People speak out. That's what those agents are there for. They're not going after billionaires.
Yeah.
This is the way of suppressing the opposition.
Thank you, Mike. It's a great point. It's a great point. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I wonder if the Star would feel the same way about crime if someone hacked into their website or broke into their offices several times a month. Well, they don't even have offices anymore. They vacated the building down there on the Loop. So they're out. Their office is now, someone's basement in Lenexa. That's the Star's office these days. But yes, your point is well taken. Of course not. They wouldn't feel the same way if they were getting the Todd Johnson Strips Chicken treatment. But in the meantime, they got to protect their own.
They get the mean girls treatment. Right? I mean, they could have just said, Johnston claims that two companies wouldn't cover the area, but the Star could find no such thing. They could say that, right, rather than accusing him.
Which is what they did.
They were trying to be objective.
It's one big accusatory piece, and it's just...
mean girls.
Yeah, totally hot garbage. 645. If you're a Kansas City business owner, this is the kind of treatment you might get. And they're trying to shame people like Todd Johnson and scare future Todd Johnsons into not speaking out. And that's only going to make things worse in this town. 913-408-7957. Quentin Lucas at 7:30 here on KCMO Talk Radio. We'll get to him next hour. And Stacey Graves, the Kansas City Police Chief, will be here at 8:05. Now, speaking of local municipalities, which one on the Kansas side is royally screwing something up? We'll tell you who and why next on 95.7 FM. I'm not going to give it up. Stars going after one of our own right here in the family. Interview Ray Stevens did with Strip's chicken owner Todd Johnson. That ain't going to stand here. You want to go after the guy who's running businesses, who's employing people, who's paying taxes, who's using those taxes to fix potholes and pay cops and pay firefighters and not go after the crappy criminal justice system we have in this county that has led to people fleeing Kansas City, Missouri with their businesses, that has also created, vacancy rates at record high levels on places like the Plaza, and you want to go after small business owners? I mean, pound sand, Kansas City Star. Paul's in Kansas City. Hey, Paul, good morning.
Hey, Pete, I'm glad you brought this up. This is how authoritarians operate. But one thing I would tell Ray and this business owner, take heed. Look at the way you push back is the way these frat boys are doing on the campuses against Antifa, these pro-Hamas protesters. Hit them with facts, stand in front of them like you're doing, and call them out on it. Don't back up, be worried about, well, they're going to make me look bad. Do what those frat boys do. Don't let the flag hit the ground. Stand your ground and stand in front of them and challenge them to a push-up contest.
I'll take Ray Stevens over any soy boy star reporter on a push-up contest 7 days a week.
Great job, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That's right. Salute to Paul. Let's go. Attaboy there, Paul. I'm sure Ray's going to open up. Well, I don't want to say what he's going to open up a show with, but I'm sure he's going to hit this morning when he's on the air starting at 10 o'clock here on KCMO. If you're not listening, you should be. Stream it for free if you're at the office by then on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And just put in those earbuds when you're at the office if you don't want to upset your coworker. I don't know why you would upset your coworker, but I'm just saying, if you feel like you might, just stream it. That's the best way to listen here if you're at the office coming up at 10. Ray's going to have a great show for you coming up later today. And I can't wait to get his response to this Kansas City Star piece, since it was really about his show and his interview with Todd Johnson from Strip's Chicken. And I'll take him in that push-up contest. As I noted yesterday, I think Ray is he warms up with 2 1/4 on the bench press. That's just the warm-up set.
He's already sending me pictures from the gym this morning.
Oh, is he hitting the gym?
He's getting pumped up.
Oh, man, he's getting that swole on. That's what he's doing. I love it. Now, he's got to save some of that, though. Save some of that swole, not just for the Kansas City Star, but I got to use some of that right now on the Olathe City Council. So the Olathe City Council this week approved plans for townhomes and a 300-unit apartment building in the Cedar Creek neighborhood. Now, before you say, well, I don't live there, I'm flipping the channel, I don't care. No, this is relevant to every suburban municipality in the Kansas City region, because they're all doing this right now. Every single one of them. Whether it's Overland Park, Olathe, go out to Lee Summit, go north to Liberty, they're all doing it at different levels, depending on how much appeal there is from developers, but they're all doing it. You know it. You know it's happening across the entire region. So Olathe is just one example of what's going on here, but let me explain this or share this one with you here. So the Olathe City Council approved plans for townhomes and a 300-unit apartment building in the Cedar Creek neighborhood, a project that many residents fought against, worried it would diminish the entrance to their sprawling subdivision, writes the Kansas City Star. There was a packed, intense meeting on Tuesday night. The council voted 5-2 to approve the rezoning and a preliminary plan requested by Lenexa-based Auto Development, which pitched a mixed-use project on 14 acres at the southeast corner of Cedar Creek and Valley Parkways. Plans include a 300-unit luxury apartment complex, a parking garage, 2 buildings with townhomes priced at $500,000 and up, and 3 commercial buildings, which could include retail and sit-down restaurants. So this is happening in Olathe, but it's happening all over the metro with these city councils. They are willy-nilly rezoning for apartments. That's what they're doing. Despite the fact that the overwhelming demand is for what? Single-family homes. That's what people want in places like Olathe and Overland Park and Lee Summit and Liberty, just to use these examples. But you know it as well as I do. That's what they want. That's what demand is for right now. We have housing prices that are skyrocketing. And it seems like instead what these cities are approving and what they're advancing are developer projects that make them money rezoning the land and jamming in as many apartments as they can. I'll give them credit. At least they're putting some for sale townhomes in this development. But, it's a fraction of what we're talking about compared to 300 apartment units. Trust me, you go around Olathe, they're popping up apartments left and right. They got this hideous-looking apartment complex that's been built at College in Ridgeview. Just an embarrassment and an abomination of a project. Sitting right there in the corner, ugly as could be, and same thing, rezoned. You got 4-story apartment buildings sitting right there on the corner. It's as ugly as could be. It's an embarrassment that the city of Olathe would allow things like that to go up, but they are. And by the way, it's a Republican majority city council. So these economic development bad ideas, they cross party lines. They're doing the bidding of the developers. It's pathetic. Instead of doing what's in the best interests of the residents, instead of actually giving, future residents what they want, which are single-family homes, they just say, developers want to build apartments, sign me up. It's all good. I'm on board with that. That sounds great. And it does nothing to further the neighborhoods that are already in place. It does nothing for your infrastructure. It's always like, well, this is great. We're going to get more tax revenue. No, because then you got to, widen roads. You got to, build more schools. When you're talking about 300 apartment units versus, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50 homes. There's a cost as well from an infrastructure perspective to these municipalities that they never seem to factor in or just don't care about. When you just go building apartment complexes by the hundreds on every free lot you can find. These cities need blowback. This is something that Mike Zinnigy ran very much against in Overland Park for mayor 3 years ago and almost won with this message. And anybody running for city councils or for mayor's races, I don't care if you're I would vote for a Democrat who, went against this stuff. I don't care because Republicans are guilty as could be on this as well. Remember a time when we were told, hey, don't worry, it's not going to be you. We're not going to audit the little guy. We're just going to go for the, the big corporations, the mega wealthy, the ones who aren't paying their fair share. You remember that time in our national discourse here as politicians were looking to get, tens of thousands of more IRS agents, and it was all just about the uber wealthy. It wasn't about you. Well, some new data here a few weeks after tax day suggests that's not what actually is going on. 63% of new audits as of the summer of 2023, the most recent data that we've got, is targeting taxpayers with incomes of less than $200,000. This data was compiled by the Wall Street Journal. And these are now the IRS's most wanted, says the Wall Street Journal. Only a small overall share of new audits reached the very highest earners. Only 20% of the new audits came on those earning more than $1 million, meaning 80% of the new audits covered filers earning less than $1 million. And 63% of those came with audits of folks making less than $200,000. Save those charitable receipts. That's my public service announcement here at 9:07 on a Thursday morning. Save them. Because this is always how this was going to go. It was never going to be targeted at the uber, mega, ultra wealthy. There's not enough money there. There's far more money, there always has been, in the middle class, in the upper middle class, when you stack all the monies up versus the mega wealthy. But it sounded good for the people who wanted this, for the people who wanted to funnel $80 billion to the IRS, to say, don't worry, it's not about you. We're going after Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. As if they don't have the best of the best when it comes to tax accountants to basically make sure that they are dotting their I's and crossing their T's. Whereas you, family of four, depending on what your household income is, it's less than $200,000. Maybe you got someone doing your taxes, but maybe you just kind of do, the TurboTax thing yourself. You go to an H&R Block, you do whatever it might be. There's a much more likely chance that you might have screwed up. and that they can bang you for a couple extra bucks. And there's a lot more of you than there are Mark Zuckerbergs. There's a lot more of you than there are Jeff Bezos's. And that's how this was always going to go. And that's who the target was always going to be. And now you've got data that backs it up. So 63% of the new audits as of the summer of 2023, last year, have come against taxpayers with less than a $200,000 household income. Now, this is not me saying cheat on your taxes. Don't misunderstand. I mean, pay every dime you can, or every dime you should. I would give the government every dime I need to give them and not a penny more. That's my goal every single year. You give what you owe and not a penny more. Doesn't mean you're breaking the law. But you do everything you can to pay these clowns as little as possible, John. That's your American duty, I believe.
Well, the way it works, the government that told you to stay home because of COVID, you can't deduct your home office.
Yeah.
Right? They're probably going to be busting on people who are going to go that route, and try to write off your office paper and things like that. And they're going to start nickeling and diming people who work from home and try to write that off.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people now that are doing that.
A lot of people, because they were told to do that.
That's true. They were told to do it, right?
Mandate.
And maybe you don't have all the information in front of you in terms of what you can write off, what you can't write off.
Exactly.
You're working from home. You're maybe unknowingly skirting the rules. And then suddenly the IRS comes in and slams you over the head. And says, by the way, you owe us this, you didn't pay us this, and there are some fees on top of that. And you're getting screwed left and right. So none of this is surprising to me. It's just happening faster than I thought it would happen. I always thought the goal was going to be to hammer the middle class and audit the middle class because they're the ones who are more likely to make a mistake here or there. And there's a lot more of them. But, we're not even a year into this thing, and the data is already showing that there are far more people being targeted under that $200,000 mark than there are those making, the $500,000, millions and millions and millions, even though it was billed as just a way to get the rich guy. And it was never going to be a way to just get the rich guy because there ain't enough rich guys to fill in the $35 trillion gap we've got when it comes to this country's debt. That was never possible.
I'm not good with my pie graphs here, but the rich guys pay the bulk of the taxes
Correct.
Already. Right?
So the top 10,
top 10
pay 90% of the taxes.
Yep. Going to have to make up the difference in that little 10%. Right?
Yeah, and the top 1% already pay 50% of the taxes.
Yeah.
So they're paying a lot, and they're making sure they got the best of the best to not pay a penny more than they legally have to. You're more likely to screw up, and that's how we end up in the situation we find ourselves in right now. 913-408-7957. That's the studio line, and that's the text line on KCMO. On the text line, Pete, I do endorse cheating on your taxes. All right. Well, I am not going to share your phone number because the IRS is going to come after you. Because I know Grandpa Joe, he's got some people monitoring the show here in Kansas City.
An area ripe for inspection, too, is your side hustle, quote unquote, air quotes. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. People don't tend to claim side hustles. You pocket it, maybe. Oh, whoops.
Got to go through those Venmo transactions, you know? Hey, what was that Venmo you got for $30 last September 21st?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Who was that all about?
$601. You're just over that mark, remember?
Yes, you're just $1 over. Mm-hmm. Give us ours, damn it.
Yep.
You're going to pay your government what you owe them. Okay. All right. Fine. So just know that's coming through. And yes, it is part of the mentality, as some of you know on the text line. The Marxist movement does want to destroy the middle class, and that's what's happening.
They'll nail you for taking a penny out of the cup at 7-Eleven, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're coming for you, every single one of you. They want to destroy the middle class. A strong middle class is not conducive to furthering their end goal.
Government dependence.
Yeah. They want an elite class, and then they want a lower class of peons and peasants who rely on the government. So there are the elites, and there are the government dependent. And there is not a robust, strong middle class. I mean, a robust, strong middle class is what has made America great for decades now. It's being destroyed through various means and ways. One of those ways, of course, is inflation, which hurts the middle class far more than anybody else. And, if you start auditing and sending the IRS thugs to the middle class, that will be another great way to go after them. And that's how you end up with the environment that is being created. 913-408-7957. Now we got the accountants texting in saying, no, don't cheat on your taxes. No one's advocating for cheating on your taxes. Just a couple of people on the text line. But, I'm not doing that. I say pay every dime you should and not a dime more. That's it. That's the goal for every single one of us here on KCMO. 913-408-7957.
That is a way to exact a revenge on the IRS, owing them nothing.
Yeah. Stick it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let them ever, come to your front door because it ain't going to be pleasant. Two things to address coming up as we roll through the 9 o'clock hour on KCMO. You hear all the time about like food deserts. Oh, we need to put a price chopper here. People deserve their food. I agree. People should have easily accessed grocery stores. But what if criminals are ruining the fun for everybody? Whose fault is it then? That's happening here in Kansas City. I'll explain it next on KCMO 95.7 FM. Yeah, it'd be great if every neighborhood had a grocery store, had a pharmacy, but then reality sets in. And that is what is happening on Independence Avenue here in Kansas City. So it was announced last week that the CVS at 2435 Independence Ave would be closing its doors by Thursday, June 13th. They started reaching out and telling some of their customers at the pharmacy that their prescriptions would have to be transferred to a different CVS location. Now, why is this happening in part? Well, as is noted here, a large part of the driver of it are theft and rent. So clicking through, as the Northeast News did, the Jackson County property taxes and the information there, of course, we know that's been an utter mess. In 2018, property taxes for this location at this CVS on Independence Avenue jumped from roughly $29,000 per year to over $46,000 per year in 2019. In 2023, total property taxes on the building and grounds were just under $59,000. So in half a decade, the property taxes effectively doubled from $29,000 to $59,000. That's nuts. And then you factor in a crime issue as well. In June of 22, CVS announced the closure of its 5901 Independence Ave location, citing increased costs, theft, and an aging facility. And according to the guy who's in charge of the site, when you look at this location at 2435 Independence Avenue, the two major factors, theft and rent, but declined to go into any more detail on possible reasons, other than the decision came from corporate, and the store's numbers met a company matrix benchmark for store closings. When you combine the rent price, increased property taxes, with theft issues. So it's kind of like, people say we need to have nicer things in certain parts of certain communities, and I think that's true. But then it's like, okay, what do you say when these places, these locations, are dealing with rising crime? When these places are dealing with out-of-control rent, thanks to incompetent county assessors like Gail McCann Beatty in Jackson County, who has not suffered a single consequence for what has been the most incompetent and I would argue illegal tax assessment process most of us have ever seen in our lives. And who gets impacted by the CVS closing at 2435 Independence Avenue? It ain't rich people, okay? Do a quick Google search if you don't believe me. It ain't the rich people. Not a lot of that off Independence Avenue. Let's just call it like it is. Okay, it's working class to working poor individuals who are getting screwed here. And they're getting screwed because of big government, and they're getting screwed because of a bad prosecutor's office, and they're getting screwed because of a laissez-faire approach to crime for far too long in this town, and they're getting screwed because they got thugs who are ruining it for everybody in the neighborhood. And the politicians who are allowing these thugs to do things like steal from CVS's with no fear of consequence. Pretty sure there are CVS's littered around Brookside. And even though Waldo's had some issues, I'm sure there's plenty in Waldo that are not getting shut down by CVS corporate. Even if they've seen also massive increases in property taxes because, well, they're not dealing with some of the theft issues that this location is. So anytime people are like, oh, man, it is like racist for Price Chopper or Hy-Vee not to put a location, fill in the blank location, right? Independence Avenue, wherever. No, they are understanding, unfortunately, the issues at play. They're more likely to deal with, and their employees are more likely to have to deal with theft issues, and that's sad. It's disappointing. But the answer is not to berate the corporation. The answer is not to berate the company who doesn't want to subject itself and its employees to high levels of theft. It's not the fault of the corporation and the private business to say, you know what, my property taxes are skyrocketing, the theft is high, I don't want to deal with it. It's not the fault of the private sector. It's not the fault of the private business to have to deal with that. It's just not.
Michael Jordan coined it best, right?
Yeah.
Republicans buy sneakers, too. In other words, if they can sell their product and turn a small profit, they'll stay in business there.
That's all they care
Simple
about.
as. I look forward to the Stars follow-up on this, just like strips.
Yeah.
Chicken as well, by the way.
Yeah. No, this is not about politics. This is not. We only want to open our stores in locations where there's wealthy people. No, it's really just about running a business. And if you're running a business, all you really care about is making sure that you can have a safe location that turns some kind of a profit. And I guarantee you, corporations like CVS are probably willing to take hits and not have every store turn massive profits.
Right.
It's not like every store has to be like the CVS in Leawood or something like that. But they can't have the bad combination of rising costs for their location in a place where also theft is very high. Imagine doing business in a place where your rent has possibly doubled, if the property taxes have doubled in the last couple of years. Your rent has doubled, theoretically, and your crime is not slowing down. Who in their right mind would stay there? So there's a lot of people that can help, and there's a lot of things to blame. But that's why these soft-on-crime approaches that these city councils in Kansas City and other major American cities advocate for just hurt the people they claim they're helping. That's what happens here. They hurt the people they claim to be helping. The people that get hurt are the single mom who's now got to drive another 10 minutes down the road to fill a prescription for her kid as she's trying to work 2 jobs. She's the one that gets hurt. Meantime, the woke clowns who are protesting with their gender studies degrees and $200,000 in student debt, who then go home to their mom's basements in the suburbs, they're doing just fine. This doesn't impact them. But they're soft on crime. They're anti-cop, pro-criminal approach to, social justice and the criminal justice movement is what is resulting in these businesses saying, I'm done here on Independence Avenue, in part. There are no ramifications. These criminals run wild. They don't feel like they're ever going to get caught. They walk into CVS and they take whatever they want. They leave and our taxes go up. Who in their right mind would keep operating a business under that premise? Nobody who's got half a brain. So when I hear about food deserts and I hear about pharmacy deserts or whatever, in Kansas City or anywhere else for that matter, I also say, okay, what are the politics? Who's in charge? Are you guys serious about stopping criminals? Are you guys serious about protecting your businesses? And if you're not, then this is in part what you're going to get more of. And it's a shame because the losers here are ultimately the innocent civilians and citizens who are just trying to, get through every day.